Good evening, friends. In this lecture, we will focus more on writing task 1 in Ielts. Writing task 1 has always been a challenge. Let me tell you that how you are evaluated. Task 1 is 30%, task 2 is 70%, which doesn't mean that you will certainly ignore task 1. Why? Because it is very scoring. It is easy, it is scoring. Students generally get confused with pattern and what selection they need to go for in task 1. Let's make the work easier for us. For academic learners, task 1 is majorly about either a diagram to explain, a graph to explain, or a pie chart to explain. So you should know the right strategy for each. Let us try to figure it out. Let's say if we have a graph. Let me remind you of the time, in grade 9, in grade 10, you had a lot of process writing to explain, you had a lot of DI to explain, data interpretation. So this task 1 is absolutely nothing but just the information of data, how beautifully you provide information based on facts and figures. So task 1 majorly has 3 paragraphs. You can summarize in 2 also. There is no proper conclusion in task 1. So first is introduction. So how to start our introduction? When it comes to graph, let us imagine that you have to compare 2 things here. That where you are comparing the figures of women with the figures of men in case of drinking. So you have observed the graph. You're always given a graph where there are comparisons in terms of entertainment, who entertain themselves more, like men or women. There is always a data given to you regarding the age group and their preferences. So you always have a data where you have to compare things based on that, somewhere that how many people like to smoke or how people, do not like to smoke, and based on age group, based on countries, water production or water supply, keeping the countries in mind, somewhere water production is more. So everything is given to you in terms of data or the figures. You may call it bar graph, you may call it line graph. It's that easy the way we think, I think you get 20 minutes in task 1, and when you get 20 minutes in task 1, DI. So it's good to analyze, to understand for 2 minutes that what the graph is all about, means where the lines are going up, where the lines are going down, where you have more to compare, where you have less to compare. These things have to be kept in mind very sharply before you start writing, otherwise you will always tend to make mistakes. Now, when you write an introduction, let's say you have figured it out that women have, throughout the period, smoked more as compared to men. So, in the very first paragraph, you will not be writing all the details that who smokes more or who smokes less. You will just writing what the graph, just the layout, what the graph says all about. So, let us say, you have introduction, you start writing. It's good to write this way. The graph elucidates. The graph displays. Instead of writing, what I can see in the graph is, it is a figure of men and women in case of smoking. No. This would be very raw style of writing, They always check the structure, lexical connection, the kind of interpretation you have in your mind, and selection of words, So it is always, keep it objective. The graph elucidates the figures of men and women regarding smoking in so and so country. Data is available from this period to this period. This much introduction is enough. You are not going to explain a lot in introduction, but I always advise my students, when you are writing a particular introduction, make sure in the last line of your introduction you add one more key line which catches examiner's attention, and maybe that you are not a crammed writer, you have your own style. So writing something like this, it is highly noticed that throughout the period women have smoked more. Or you can write that throughout the period it is noticed that men surprisingly smoked less in particularly this period. Whatever interpretation and consideration you must have had after looking at the graph. It is important that you always write a key line in the end of your introduction. So this was about introduction. Second paragraph is all about comparisons. most of the candidates fail to score 7.5 just because of the fact that they are not very good at comparing things. They write as it is given in the graph, like women smoke this much from this period to this period, men smoke this much from this period to this period. I think this is very plain style of writing. I'm sorry. So it is very important that when you start writing, you think where you have scope of comparing things, and let's say that you have written something like that. In case of women, I think that there is always a proper way of starting. In case of women, the level of smoking, do not write women smoked all the time. The level of smoking remained or began at 10%. Maybe that in case figures begin at 10%. Began at 10%. It is highly noticed within a decade time, or maybe within 10 years, the figures jump from 10 to 50. So there is a sharp difference of 40%. This is what you call comparing things. You are just writing that earlier it was 10%, now it is 50%. Examiner, won't give you marks if you are not very good at comparing things. So make sure when you're writing second para, you always find scope of comparing things, and do not repeat the words like increase and decrease. When you are done with your writing, just go back and check how many times you have used the word increase and decrease. Try to encircle and use words like rose to, I think, begin at this, and rose from 10 to 50%. I think that will be right interpretation instead of saying that increase from 10% to 50%. So work upon the second para. Second para catches examiner's attention, and you have to really work upon that. Third paragraph is all about writing conclusion. I always say it is a candidate's choice. You want to write the third para or not, up to you. So you can skip your third para because there is no proper conclusion in Ielts writing task 1. You can just summarize, but yes, once you end your task 1, it should sound like that you are coming to an end, and words like overall, eventually, it is estimated that, something like this. So these running lines really tell that you're going to end up. And when you're going to end up, make sure you don't get into figures again. You have already explained per year figures. In the end, you have to talk about majorly 3 comparisons. How it began, the middle part, what happened, and in the end. For an example, in this particular graph, eventually it is noticed that women smoked more than men throughout the period by 20%. In case you're not writing by 20% up, even then it will go. Whereas in case of men, initially it was low, but after so and so year, it reached at this, means whatever percentage you want to write. If you don't want to write it, so after so and so year, do not write the word it increased. After so and so period, it jumped, skyrocketed. You can write something like that, or maybe in the end, if not, this is not the comparison. In the end, the level of smoking in case of men and women remain nearly same. This could be the way of writing. Make sure that you start learning right strategies. But in this lecture, whatever I have covered, you must follow that. In the beginning, do not make the mistake. I can see the graph. Always say the graph depicts, and the second paragraph, always focus on comparison. Please don't slip through this. And third paragraph, no conclusion. Do not write in conclusion. Always choose the words like overall, eventually, it is finally estimated. I'm sure when you choose these lines, your scores go high. And make sure you do not keep your task 1 under length. It has to end up with 170 words at least. Sometimes candidates are very good, but they end up with 140. So this really affects your scores. Keep learning. Bye-bye.